Hi, it's Brian Thomas here with Senator John Husted. Welcome back to the program, John. It's always a pleasure having you on. Boy, there's a flurry of activity coming out of Washington, D.C. Very impressed by what the Trump administration's been able to accomplish. And personally happy to see the big, beautiful bill get passed. I mean, I was hoping, and I think my listeners were hoping for more cuts, recognizing some of the work that DOJ had done. We expected, a much larger slice of the government to be cut out, but a lot of great was accomplished in the big, beautiful bill. Most notably, the tax increase or the tax cuts have been made permanent. And that, despite of what the Democrats keep saying, that is a benefit to a huge swath of Americans and, of course, Ohioans.
Yeah, small businesses, manufacturers, all of them benefit by knowing what the rules are. They know they can plan. They can plan a capital investment knowing that they're going to be able to deduct the cost of that in this year's taxes, which means they have predictability, and then they can hire people. They can grow. This kind of stuff is very important, but it's also important for middle class working families. And I want to dig into that. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime. A bigger deduction for Social Security recipients, a child tax credit for working families, not one that's rebatable to people that don't work, but for people who actually work. All of that, fantastic stuff for working families in Ohio.
And something we just recently found out, everyone on the left side of the ledger is screaming about how everyone's going to die because they're going to have their Medicaid taken away from them. I just saw an article in the Wall Street Journal I talked about earlier in the program yesterday, and $14 billion in fraud, waste, and abuse, most notably people signed up in multiple states. It didn't take them that long to apply modern computer technology to cross-reference these people and find out that they're registered in multiple states, double dipping. That was an easy fix. How come it took so long to come up with that one?
Well, frankly, one of the problems is the federal government pays the bill and the states administer it, so many states have no incentive to actually go track this down. And we did that with SNAP, saying, hey, if you're going to have fraud and abuse, then the states that have it, you're going to pay a little bit more of the cost of doing these programs. That's certainly the case with Medicaid. You have people who are ineligible who are on there, people who are registered in multiple states. And what does that matter? Because you have insurance companies, Medicaid managed care companies that states pay premiums. The federal government pays premiums in both states. So that's a huge cost of covering multiple people, even though they should only be, or multiple states, even though it should only be in one state. That stuff matters. It adds up to billions of dollars, and nobody was doing it before. And that's a big difference. It's like you can identify these things, but what are we doing about it? We're doing something about it in this bill.
Yeah, one thing we all have learned of late, there is no follow-through to find out what happens after the money goes out the door in Washington. Does it actually accomplish anything? All these non-governmental organizations with their hands in the cookie jar of the taxpayer money. We don't know. I mean, like the DOJ identified projects. We don't know if even the Sesame Street program in Iraq or whatever was even done. The money did go towards something that was labeled as that, but nobody follows up and tracks the taxpayer dollars. So I think it's a refreshing thing that the Trump administration is doing along those lines, at least trying to make sure the money's doing something and accomplishing something on behalf of the American taxpayer. Now, one of the problems.
Well, let me just say something on that. There's a big message sent. We stayed up till 2:30 in the morning doing the rescissions package to take back literally $9 billion in spending. Not a huge amount. You would think that would be easy. Finally, cutting things like Sesame Street in Iraq and transgender surgeries in Guatemala. We cut those packages. And the message to the bureaucracy is this, Brian: don't do stupid things and you'll be fine. But if you do stupid things, we are actually willing to cut your budget. So that was a big message that was sent.
That's amazing concept, John Husted. Now, I saw Donald Trump sign the Halt Fentanyl Act into law. I wanted to pivot over to that. I think we in Ohio have a problem with fentanyl like all the other states. And, of course, I think the main problem is the Chinese Communist Party and sending all the precursor elements out into the world to be turned into fentanyl. Whether or not Trump accomplishes getting that shut down would go a long way to stopping the fentanyl problem. But how is the Halt Fentanyl Act going to help us here in Ohio?
It's going to give law enforcement more tools to go after people. A lot of times they would hide these ingredients under, technicalities in the law. This just cleans it up, gives law enforcement more power to go after the bad actors. But it's also important in the trade fight with China. There's a premium in there on a tariff, a 20% additional tariff until China takes care of these issues around fentanyl. So they're going to, if they're going to keep turning a blind eye to the problems that they're creating in this country and the sort of the modern day opium war, we're going to have to continue to push back on them and giving law enforcement more tools with halt fentanyl and all these things. It's a terrible tragedy that comes with it. It's also the human trafficking and all that from drug addicted people that ends up happening from the gangs and the people coming across the border illegally. It's just a whole mess that was created by the Biden administration that we're still trying to sort out. And this is just one more tool for law enforcement, those men and women who go out there every day and put their lives on the line to protect us.
Senator Husted, pivoting over to the CAFE standards, something the Trump administration wants to get rid of. I think it's a pointless thing to have. Laws of supply and demand should be in effect. If I want to drive a car that gets 8 miles to the gallon, and I don't, I should be able to buy one. But these CAFE standards create artificial miles per gallon that are forcing manufacturers to build electric vehicles that apparently the population does not want. They're losing money. They're hemorrhaging. The tax credits are disappearing, so there's less incentive to buy an electric vehicle. Can't we just scrap the whole process and let the market forces dictate what we drive and what our miles per gallon happen to be?
Well, we're in the process of scrapping a lot of that, yes, on CAFE standards, but also we repealed the California EV mandate that 17 other states had joined. If you remember, they were going to say all cars in California and 17 other states had to be electric vehicles by 2035. Think about that. Every new car had to be an electric vehicle by 2035, and we repealed that Biden-era regulation that allowed them to do that. That kind of stuff, I mean, frankly, we saved them from themselves.
Yeah.
There's no way that the people of those states would have rebelled if you were going to force them to have to buy electric cars. But common sense and a Republican majority prevailed in that one, and we repealed it. But all of those things skew the markets. Companies go out and make investments not on what the consumer wants, but what the government regulations say they must do. And that skews the whole landscape. And eventually you ping pong it around because it's one administration gets in, they set rules. The next one comes in, they set a different set of rules. Just clean the slate, let the car companies respond to the consumers. Technology will drive better environmental and outcomes and emission achievements.
Good ideas, great ideas do not require force or tax incentives, John. That's my point on that.
And that is right. And every day we get new lessons about that.
Hey, real briefly, I know we're out of time. Just one final question. Where are you on the Epstein files? I hate to, go over that diversion, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain kind of thing. But are you in favor of releasing this? I think most of my listening audience is like, just let it out, get it over with. And
we can do this. Look, turn over all you can. Don't turn over anything that would undermine a potential prosecution if there is somebody who deserves to be prosecuted.
Yes.
And also protect the victims. We don't want victims' names out there. They didn't do anything wrong. If you recall in the Prince Andrew case, the woman who got outed in this Epstein saga, she committed suicide. We want to protect the victims. But everything else, get it out there. Get this. Let's move on by being transparent.
Amen to that. And Senator Husted, I think they would go a long way to solving this so-called crisis if the Justice Department say we do have ongoing criminal investigations, which is why we can't release the information. I think that would satisfy a lot of people and at least put the whole issue to bed. Yeah,
and then prosecute someone.
Amen.
You can't imagine that only those two, the Epstein and the Epstein girlfriend were the only ones involved in committing a crime here. You'd have to think that there's someone else too that deserves to be prosecuted.
I think that's a safe conclusion. Senator Husted, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for the time you spent with my listeners and me this morning. I truly appreciate it. Keep up the great work.